Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Are you looking for an ADHD coach who is on the cutting edge, who is using neuroscience with things like flow state to help you manage your ADHD better? Well, my next guest is just that. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and let's learn more about him. See you there.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping up.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I'm joined with Anthony Palacin. Welcome to the show, Anthony.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
That's a big question. So I thought I had a pretty normal childhood, as I think anyone does. And I was actually quite lucky. My um, my life led me to engineering school, and I started my career with an engineering job. And a couple of years after that, I experienced mania and psychosis, which led to my bipolar diagnosis. And along the way, I also discovered music festivals, which gave me a lot of insights about the kind of life that I wanted to create and helped me pivot outside of the world of engineering towards what eventually became coaching. But before I landed on coaching, uh, I had to kind of solve the um, the mental health situation, and that's really where the the self-development of working on my own mental health, plus the passion for helping people, in combination with the insights that I got of how I want to live my life from music festivals, all kind of combined to leading me into this space of becoming a coach.
Now, you have ADHD. When were you diagnosed?
So I am basically, I got diagnosed with bipolar first, which was
Mhm.
7.5 years ago. And I had two episodes within 2 years. The ADHD thing came only last year, when I did the diagnostic process in France. And the small caveat is I was working with the psychiatrist to get off of my bipolar medication. And one of the big reasons that I took the ADHD test is because my learnings about mental health and about my own situation led me to the idea, the belief, and the theory that I was actually ADHD that was mismanaged, plus trauma that was untreated or unprocessed and unaware of, which is which is what led to the bipolar symptoms and thus the diagnosis. And so that's the reason that I got the ADHD test in France. Now, when I did the ADHD test, I was 50-50 on the borderline of getting diagnosed versus not getting diagnosed. And the discussion with the psychiatrist led to uh, there's no need for another label, and there's no need to have a change of pills if the first option is rather to explore getting off of the antipsychotic pills first. And what gives me confidence with my self-diagnosis and theory of me being ADHD is actually all the patterns in my life that I had before, always seeking risk, always procrastinating, kind of distracted in my creative thoughts. my addictions to screens and um, sugary foods, all these like dopamine stimulating activities. So this is all the historical stuff. But then what I actually did between getting diagnosed with bipolar and almost getting diagnosed with ADHD was I found a strong sense of purpose, which itself is very dopamine inducing. And I trained as a coach in the neuroscience of flow states, and flow itself is a very dopamine driven state. So I had actually trained my focus and concentration and productivity skills for years, and I meditated for years in the process of working on my bipolar before I was actually diagnosed with ADHD. And because I was on the borderline after having done all that inner work, I imagine that if I had taken the test 5 or 10 years before, I would have been definitely in the diagnosis zone. Unfortunately, my life circumstances made it such that I had to deal with bipolar instead, or on the front end rather than ADHD. So I won't have necessarily an exact scientific answer as to whether or not my brain circuits look like ADHD, but from my internal perspective and deep down emotionally, that is what I self-identify as.
Now, how did you handle yourself when you were in college? I mean, and everyone knows when you have ADHD, your mind is all over the place. How did you handle that? Not knowing you had ADHD, but bipolar.
Yeah, I was always a very last minute person. And I actually prioritized a lot of the social life and the personal interests and explorations over grades. I probably had the potential to be a 3.5 to 4.0 student in engineering, but the reality was I I was in the 3.0 range, and that was with the procrastination and all the last minute push of the pressure that this is what I needed to get into the major that I wanted to be in. If there was not even that, I would have probably gone even lower. So basically, all those ADHD tools, like the carrot and the stick of motivation, so giving yourself rewards for achieving stuff or experiencing the consequences of punishment for failing to achieve a goal, these were the things that were driving my dopamine to actually get me to do stuff that I was not so interested in, at least compared to my personal interests. So, to answer your question, I think the summary is suboptimally. I I wasn't really super clear on where I was going. I just pursued it because it was kind of the thing that I was most interested in compared to everything else that was possible to study. But I definitely had my lapses due to focus and procrastination and just conflicting personal interests.
And that's funny you bring that up. I mean, that sounds almost exactly like me when I went away for my master's degree in England. Is I tried everything in my powers to deal with my ADHD. I sat in front of the class. I recorded all my lectures. I attended the right before exams, we had the review course where you go over all your material for the year. And I still put, like you, I put friends and exploring pri first over studies. And it affected me. I mean, even though I had on-time testing, I still didn't get my master's. I wound up with a postgraduate, but it hurt me in the end. I needed to motivate myself like you did, but I just did not do it well enough.
Yeah, I think there's a natural motivation that comes from societal expectations and pressures that are either self-induced or societally induced or family induced. I mean, I definitely was not the type to let the time and energy that I spent in university go to waste. So a lot of that was in my favor. But I was also not the kind that my brain was able to just do things in a consistent manner. I was more the type to pull all-nighters right before the deadline in order to accomplish the goal because I needed that additional pressure to really get the things accomplished.
Now, how did you go from engineering to coaching?
It's a great question. Some of it is my own self-development because before I had to deal with the bipolar, I was dealing with being overweight and having
Mm,
a lot of psychological problems related to self-image, body image, relationships, and sexuality. So the professional direction, I was doing engineering, I was getting paid and living life as an engineer after university. But on the personal side, I was trying to learn how to exercise, how to eat better, how to be more confident. And slowly, slowly, I started getting breakthroughs. And all of this was through my own self-learning. I was looking at articles online. I was listening to podcasts. I was reading books, and I was implementing the stuff that I was learning in my life. And some of it failed, but some of it succeeded. And with the compound effects, eventually I got more and more results and more confidence in myself.
mhm,
And now, fast forward to a point where I've been at a healthy weight for a long enough time that weight has no longer been an issue. I've been in enough relationships that my dating life and sexuality was no longer an issue for me. And it was the same with finding a sense of purpose and clarity in life. So all of this through self-development that I did kind of on my own as a side gig to what I was doing in the engineering life. And it was based on having solved all of these personal problems that I realized one day through being coached
mm,
myself. I had a breakthrough moment when I was exploring entrepreneurship, and the coach asked one question. He said, whatever your business or business idea is, in one sentence or less, what's the big why behind why you're doing what you're doing? And for me at that time, I hadn't discovered coaching yet, but I knew I wanted to do some kind of entrepreneurship. When I was asked that question, it's like a light bulb flicked in my head. And what I wrote down was, I want to help and inspire people. And that has been the kind of guiding light of my purpose. When I found a strong sense of purpose, this was one of the pivotal moments. Since then, it has gone deeper, but that is when the light switched and I realized I wanted to do the same thing as what that person did with me by asking that question. And I had a feeling that I had it inside of me based on the experiences that I've had and the results that I had gotten personally that I could do that. And the next day, I raised my hand and I called myself a life coach.
good for you. A lot of people, when it comes to um, the sense of what they want to do, when they're presented with that question of why they want to do it, a lot of them don't know because when they know what they want to do, but they don't know why. And when they're presented with it, like you were, a lot of times, like you said, that light bulb goes off in your head is, what is the reason why I wanted to do this? And a lot of people don't have a reason, but some do. And you are one of the few who did have a reason. And the reason is a very powerful one because you're right. You want to give what was given to you to others. And that
Exactly.
And that's so important because a lot of people don't realize the experience they were given should be given to others because it's an important lesson.
Absolutely. And it kind of ties together the coaching
Mhm.
with engineering in a weird way. And it has to do with you kind of touched on the concepts without saying this word, but privilege.
Mhm.
I've always felt like a very privileged person. I mean, I grew up in a quote unquote third world country, Tunisia, for 11 years, and I've
Mhm.
seen a certain level of poverty and suffering compared to Europe and compared to the Western countries like the US that was different. And growing up, this has always had an effect on me. Like, why do people have to live in such terrible conditions or needing to do with such injustice? And I originally wanted to become an engineer to help make the world a better place. And that was through very tangible products, through a very science-based approach of creating stuff that makes the world a better place. Um, but with the pivot to coaching, now it's more on the intangible stuff of helping people with their purpose, helping people with their mind, and yeah, something less material, but still transformational and impactful that can be that can have a huge impact at scale.
Now, that is such important because I'm pretty sure every client you've touched, you've gotten that breakthrough moment where they realize that aha moment. What's that mean to you when you're working with a client and all of a sudden you see them hit that aha moment and then their eyes just light up and they realize they know what they want and why they want it.
Yeah, the aha moment is magical for me. I mean, it's magical for me to experience because I know how deep it will impact the rest of their life. Because I've had my own aha moments, whether it's through coaching or life experiences. And sometimes it doesn't take much, but to have a mirror that is able to reflect to you some of these deep truths that either you know or get out of your own head, get out of your own way, and have a real impact. And for me, there's nothing more magical than that. Like releasing something that's been blocking someone for years or giving them a realization about something that has been blocking them for years is just like a huge weight off of their shoulders. And it's it's a blessing to me to be able to offer that for someone. I I don't know what it's like to be a doctor, but I imagine it would have some similarities with the feeling of saving a life.
I mean, that is so important because I'm pretty sure when someone comes to you, they're stuck in somewhere in life and they don't know what's blocking them. What do you do to help them get to that moment where they realize that this is your block and you get them through it and then well, like, wow, that was really easy to do. What do you do to get them to that place?
That's a very long answer, but I can summarize kind of the key ingredients in what I cover. It's a mix of personal performance. So over the years since becoming a life coach, I've specialized into peak performance coaching with a focus on focus. So the skill and the ability to concentrate and be zoned in on one thing, which is rooted in the neuroscience of tapping into a flow state. Flow being that magical state when we are so absorbed by an activity that we lose our sense of time, we lose our sense of self. And at the end of that activity, it feels like time flew by and it doesn't it doesn't seem like as much time went by as actually did. And so that state of flow is trainable in everyday activities when we know the neuroscience behind it and when we cultivate the skill of practicing. So this is one of the big important pillars. Another one of the pillars is a spiritual connection. And I'm not one to be prescriptive about spirituality or religion. all all beliefs can be valid, and I'm not one to invalidate anyone's belief, but to have a strong sense of connection with the nature of the universe, the existence of reality, like answering the big questions of why do we perceive things as they are, as opposed to nothing existing at all. Making sense for that, making sense of those questions for yourself, and everything about life will unfold in a way that is more effortless and more connected to your own sense of truth. And this whole pillar of spiritual connection is also connected with the pillar of purpose. And purpose being not just a material kind of work purpose, but a purpose for existence and a purpose of every moment of your actions. And how do you train yourself to learn the lessons that you need from what life situations come up for you
Mhm.
in order to grow into the kind of person that is going to fulfill your purpose? And also the whole process of getting clear on how to find your purpose, if that is something that would help. So I kind of mix all of these things depending on what a person needs at a specific moment in different order and at different extents for everyone.
Now, I want to go back to something. You got yourself off of antipsychotics. What was that like? Because I know a few people that were on it, and one of them has told me it kind of changes, gets rid of the impulsive thoughts and all that, but also makes him sit, he's got that sedation feel. What was that like going off of that and then realizing you don't have that you have ADHD as well?
That's a very complex question, and I'll answer in two parts. One part, I want to give a disclaimer that I'm not medically trained, and any of my personal path was done in parallel with medical system support. So the medical system support side of things has given me pills, and I've taken them, and when I was psychotic and manic, they were helpful to get me back into a balanced state. Now, I've always believed that the pills were not addressing the root cause of the issue. So, in parallel to this journey of taking pills kind of as a crutch to manage the symptom, I've been doing self-education and changing my habits in order to deal more with the root causes. And this is a big, big complex topic, and everyone's situation is so unique. So there's no cookie cutter scenario that fits. But basically, I got help with from the medical system for the medical side of things always keeping them posted about what new developments were happening in my life. When COVID happened, I was a little more down than when COVID was not happening. When I had lost my job, I was more down than when I had a job. So things like that are part of the equation. And in parallel to all of that, there was the three pillars that I mentioned. So I found a deep sense of purpose for myself. I deepened my spiritual understanding and spiritual connection. And as a part of that, I've been meditating for somewhere between 5 and 8 years, but definitely for 5 years consistently. So that's been a part of getting off of the medication. And another part was the neuroscience of flow states, which helped me overall amplify my personal performance, not only my ability to focus, but as a second degree effect of that, there was freeing up more time and energy back into my life, which has allowed me to prioritize sleep a little bit more and to do a little bit more exercise. So all of this triggered a positive cycle that reinforced itself. And the last thing that was not related to the medical side was discovering therapy and understanding the link between trauma and mental illness and starting to work on my own unconscious wounds and traumas. And this has been a big part of giving me the confidence to feel like I'm ready to get off of the antipsychotics because fundamentally my nervous system had changed. I've cried some tears that were locked up in my system for more than 25 years because of therapy. And I've accessed experiences that have allowed me to let go of some of my worries and some of my toxic patterns and my attachments to alcohol or people's approval. And these kind of things were all part of the process and unrelated to the medical side and the pills side of the equation.
Now, with ADHD, I know there comes racing thoughts and constant thoughts going through your head and everything else. How do you deal with that on the day-to-day level?
I think on one part, the compound effect of meditation for many years has been really helpful. And I really want to advocate that it's not because one has ADHD that one cannot meditate. To be able to just close your eyes for 5 seconds and sit still, even just 5 seconds, and push it from 5 seconds to 10 seconds, that is meditation. Like, you don't need to be able to meditate for 5 minutes and have no thoughts at all in order to qualify as this is meditation, you're doing it correctly. Actually, it's like learning how to walk as a toddler. Crawling is a part of it. Falling down is a part of it. And so observing your thoughts, the racing thoughts happening as they come, is a part of it. And the more time happens, the more you practice, the more you're able to let go of them. So this has been huge. And I'd say in parallel to this, the flow training was another part of the equation that really helped me better filter which thoughts are important for right now, for today, and for this week, and not thoughts that are important for a year from now. And kind of cultivating the discipline of better filtering thoughts and better brain dumping the ones that are necessary to keep track of, like the ones that are immediately actionable, the ones that need to be remembered but not actioned just yet, and the ones that need to be discarded because, well, they're a nice train of thoughts, but they're not useful for the immediate here and now. And so the combination of these two things is really what I would say are the big contributors to dealing with the racing thoughts and like big sparks of creativity.
When you mentioned the flow training process, what is it and how did it help you and how did you get to using it to your practice?
I would say it is at the same time a training. Like you can go online, you can learn about flow states and what leads to a flow state, and you can start practicing the things that you learn from these teachings. But it's also a philosophy. And the philosophy aspect is a little more intangible. So I'll kind of speak to both. The things that you can learn about is how to structure your day based on what kind of tasks you have. Are you a morning person or are you an evening person? How do you set goals the right way? How do you like when should you recover and how should you recover your brain optimally so that you can bounce back into a state of focus? These are the very practical kind of productivity related neuroscience understandings that help people get into a flow state. The other thing, which is more philosophical, is more on a way of being that is cultivating flow. It's it's about kind of valuing things in a different way. It's about prioritizing a life that is free from burnouts and like minimizing stress. It's about working on things that will have a big impact on your goals rather than the little impact. So for one specific example is if someone plans to be an author, then you're going to make progress on being an author by writing pages of a book. Doesn't matter if it's going to be published or not. At least you're going to train yourself to write and do this deep work. A task that is not so conducive to becoming an author is responding to emails. This is kind of just busy work. And so, knowing all of these philosophical principles behind what leads to a high performance life of reaching big goals if you have them. These are kind of the more philosophical aspects of flow.
Now, what kind of clients do you see? Do you see those who are on the neurodivergent scale of ADHD? And what kind of problems do they come to you with?
It's a lot of neurodivergent people or neurodivergent questioning. So we live in a society with a lot of technology, a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm, and even for people who don't have ADHD by their brain wiring, they still can be dealing with ADHD-like symptoms. For example, distraction, procrastination, constant doom scrolling on Instagram and leaving things till the last minutes, kind of rushing and urgency. All of these things are part of the puzzle. And some people will come and learn more about flow and implement flow in their life and decide, I actually, I actually don't really need to figure out whether I am ADHD or not, because there's all these skills that I can train in, which will lower my symptoms, maybe to the point that it no longer is bothersome. And then there are those who know that they are neurodivergent and we relate because of neurodivergence and we think in different ways. And it can be any problem in life, really, but usually productivity, work, lifestyle related, health and wellness sometimes as well. Like there are some people with bigger health problems through who come to me and flow training flow states and spirituality has been a part of their healing journey and this is a cutting edge area of research actually since flow the neuroscience of flow has only been around for 4 or 5 decades at this point. So we're still understanding more about it and we're understanding more about where it applies. I also work with a lot of solopreneurs or people who want to create a business
Mhm.
and achieve time and location freedom. And flow as a peak performance tool is something that kind of raises every aspect of your performance and just helps you get more done in less time. So that's kind of applicable for anyone that has goals. So yeah, it's a wide range at the moment.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your ADHD. When you got diagnosed last year, did you feel like a veil was lifted and everything before now finally makes sense to your life?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I see it in my family. Like none of my family were diagnosed with any neurodivergence of any sort, whether bipolar or ADHD or anything. But I see the characteristics and and seeing them today, I'm 32 now, and there's a calculator in my mind that projects backwards. How was it like 30 years ago? you know, 30 years of life experience and self-development leads to symptoms that are still noticeable today. So I cannot imagine what it was like back then. And this kind of gives me the caregiving environment that I was in. So for me, the light bulb moment was not so much the diagnosis, but when I dove deep into books about ADHD, like Scattered Minds by Gabor Mate, ADHD, A Hunter in a Farmer's World by Tom Hartman. Um, these kind of books gave me theories about where ADHD might come from and how to think about it in different ways that not only help me make sense of
Mm.
it as an issue, but flip the script from issue to superpower. And this has been tremendously helpful, not only for my healing journey, let's say, but for empowering me to kind of reclaim that label as an advantage.
Now, how do you manage your ADHD yourself? Do you have tricks and trades that you teach your clients that you use yourself?
Yeah, everything I teach, I've either experienced and I practice on a regular basis, or I've at least given it a try. There are some things that I don't do as often. Um, for example, ice baths, cold showers, or water dips. Those are a big method to recover mentally and also give a massive dopamine boost and confidence boost and get you in a focused state for the next couple of hours. And I do this occasionally, but not on a daily basis. The productivity stuff from flow states, this is something that is in my day-to-day life, because one of the philosophical aspects of flow is to not really lean on willpower. A lot of people teach forcing yourself to do things, like you've just got to resist doing bad stuff and you've got to force yourself to do good stuff. For me, it's not about that at all. My life is an effortless flow. When there are things that happen in my life that I want to improve, I take those things happening as an opportunity to gain awareness about them and to dig deeper into what are the root causes behind me having this conflict of values. Like, on one hand, I want to be in the highest shape of my life. I want to have a six pack. I want to run a marathon every day. Like, this kind of peak fitness goal, which I'm not at. On the other hand, I have the occasional, I want to eat a whole tub of Ben and Jerry's. You know, in one part, it's a pleasure, and I don't want to live a life where I'm completely willpower not allowing myself Ben and Jerry's. But on the other hand, when I eat a whole tub by myself, it's too much. It's beyond my values. So when it happens, I try to connect more dots in my head using awareness and connecting the trigger, the situation that led to it, with the emotions that I'm feeling in the moment, even if it's hard to become aware of them, to eat that whole Ben and Jerry's. And it doesn't matter whether it's a tub of Ben and Jerry's or whether it's any addiction to a substance or to a behavior. It could be gambling, it could be sex, it could be alcohol, it could be cigarettes, it could be marijuana, it could be MDMA, cocaine, it could be anything. When we build that self-awareness, we can get closer and closer to understanding ourselves, why we have the behaviors we have, and this is what I teach people to compound. If you keep doing this for your whole life, you will get insights, and the symptoms that you don't want to happen will reduce. And without forcing yourself to either resist doing the bad thing or push yourself to do the good thing.
That you brought up a very important point, and that is self-awareness. I remember when I started meditating myself, one of the things they talk about is always being in the present, rem reminding yourself to when you like the first thing you do, like when you get off your seat, remind yourself to be in the present so your mind is there and focused on what you're doing at that time and being aware of what's going on instead of being aware of everything else around you.
That's exactly it. And this is where there's a common thread between meditation, spiritual practice, and flow states. So there's a natural synergy when even if you're not into meditation or spirituality and you just want high performance neuroscience, that high performance neuroscience will lead you to realizing that you can only be in a flow state when you are in the present moment, or vice versa. If you're someone who is more on the spiritual side and not so much into neuroscience, you can realize that tuning into this spiritual connection and honing the skill of presence is going to lead to benefits that are backed by neuroscience. Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about meditation. I mean, that is such an important thing when it comes to ADHD because it helps quiet the mind. What do you tell people who say, I can't meditate, my mind is all over the place, I can't focus? How do you get them to like sit down and to say, you gotta focus on your thoughts and your breath, and you just gotta keep doing it? How do you get it through to them that it's imperative that your focus be on your breath and sooner or later you will get great accomplishments out of it?
There's a couple of pieces to the equation. There are two pieces that I would say are more conscious mind, and one of them is about bridging the gap.
Mhm.
So you don't need to meditate for 1 minute in order to call yourself a meditator, and you don't need your mind to be quiet in order to call yourself a meditator. So if I was sitting in front of someone who said they can't meditate, I would be like, okay, just remove your hands from the keyboard, like put your hands in the air and take a deep breath. Now close your eyes and count to five. You know, one, two, three, four, five. Congratulations, you've just meditated. And if there are thoughts that popped up, that's okay. You know, if the simple act of kind of just breaking the boundary that there is no minimum expectation to meditation and it's all a training doesn't do it, there's the teaching around the compound effect. So if you don't believe that 5 seconds is meditation, then just meditate for 5 seconds every day. And you'll see after 30 days, you'll be able to meditate for 10 seconds easily. Meditate for 10 seconds after another 30 days. You'll be able to extend it to 15. In fact, if
Hmm.
that rate of progress sounds so slow that it's boring, you're actually going to make a faster rate of progress. And lo and behold, you'll be meditating sooner than you actually thought you would.
But you know,
Hmm?
I tell you, what people don't realize the power of meditation. When
Yes.
I first started meditating, I had trouble doing it, but as I got into it, I got to a state where I would stop breathing for like 5 seconds, and all of a sudden, during that 5 seconds, I can hear my thoughts. And I realized at one point I'm focusing on the thought, and I'd say to myself, I'm not focusing on my breath anymore. I need to go back to the breath and let that thought go. And I go back, and then I just get back into the flow. And people don't realize that once you are able to hear your own thought and realize you're focusing on it, that you need to let it go, you're gonna enter a much calmer state of mind.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the belief in the benefits of
Mhm.
meditation. And in order to diagnose the situation, we can have a multi-pronged approach. I mean, if they know all of the benefits of meditation in theory, but struggle with the practice, and if it's not any conscious mind stuff that's getting in the way of them meditating, and if it's not any, let's call it perfectionism of what the standard of meditation that they've set in their mind should be, because that's actually successful meditation. To have an imperfect meditation is a part of the journey towards this goal of meditating, and to be compassionate with yourself about embracing the path as a journey, that's a part of it too. And of course, we're in a society where we have so much on our minds, and particularly ADHD minds, when they take a minute to quiet and they're no longer in the busy of the doing, the mind gets into a different state, more of creativity and relaxation, and that can lead to all sorts of different thoughts. It can be We can approach it with compassion that these thoughts are all coming for good reason, and maybe you don't need to take any actions on them. Or we can, if some of them feel like they need to be actioned, then so be it. Break your meditation and take actions on your thoughts. Maybe it just involves taking the thoughts out of your head, like, oh, I remember I have a dentist appointment. I need to call to reschedule. I have to add this to the grocery list. This can pop up in the meditation. And if it feels so important that you need to take action on it, my encouragement would be to get it out of your brain and onto a piece of paper so that you remember and then get back into the meditation. Or just call it a day and try again tomorrow. But the important is to keep maintaining that consistent practice because that's part of the journey.
What people don't realize with meditation is that a forced focus isn't a good focus. You need your mind to be calm. You can't force yourself to focus on something. You have to be in the moment. You have to be aware of what you're focusing on and just know what's happening. And that's why a lot of times people, especially those of us who have ADHD, struggle with meditation in the beginning because your mind is constantly wandering. But if you're able to quiet your mind and just focus for a couple of seconds, like you've said, you've done a good job.
Exactly. And the other thing is the importance of the compound effect. When we don't really see the benefits of meditating 5 seconds a day, but there is a science to it. that says that your progress will be cumulative. When you can meditate 5 seconds a day, 10 seconds a day, you're not just getting the benefits from those 5 seconds. You're getting the benefits of training your mind to get into a state that is not everything else that you do in your day-to-day life. And to create that habit loop and to reinforce it every single day makes it effortless to go back into it and to stay in it deeper. And that will then create a cycle of positively reinforcing effects. So you'll free up more time, you'll free up more energy in your day, you'll feel better, you'll get more clear about your next tasks or what's important, you'll feel more present, you'll feel more connected. Just all of these positive things.
Now, what advice do you have for people who just got late diagnosed with ADHD and don't know where to go or what to do?
I would say learn as much as you can about it from various sources. There is so much available online. There are so many podcasts, there are so many books, there are so many videos on YouTube. There are so many experts out there. There's AI now, and you can ask AI for recommendations on what resources to check out. Just exploring your understanding of your diagnosis and learning more about it will help you understand more about yourself and the reasons and the circumstances that led to becoming who you are in this moment, and also what to do in your next steps in order to create a better life for yourself, in order to either manage your problems better or to feel better about the situation, the mindset, or the beliefs you have about it, or practical tools to actually reach your goals faster and more easily. All
Mhm.
of this is useful. You can talk to practitioners in the wellness space, doctors, clinicians, psychiatrists, coaches, therapists. All of them will bring a different perspective, and they're all worth considering in addition to your own experience and your own intuition. At the end of the day, you are the only experts about your life.
Mhm.
Do not lose your empowerment of your own knowledge about your own life just because other people say something. And there will be conflicting opinions out there. The most important is that you make sense of your own story for in a way that feels like the truth, and keep digging until you find your own truth.
And finally, where can people find out more about you and get a hold of you in case they want to talk to you?
I am online at www.palacin.co.uk. That's palacin.co.uk. Or you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Those are the main platforms that I typically hang out on. Feel free to send a message or an email or subscribe to my newsletter and get in touch. I've also got a bunch of free resources for focus, flow states, productivity, ADHD, and I'm always happy to have a conversation to point people towards whatever the best next step for them would be.
And that's it, everybody. I'm Reed Miles. That was Anthony Palacin, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you so much.
The